What's today's date, 18th, right? Good evening and welcome to the March 18th meeting of the Facilities Improvement Committee. I'd like to start the meeting by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right.
So without looking at the agenda, I think the first item was review of last week's minutes. Anybody have any changes to last week's minutes? The last meeting's minutes, which was the 6th. I was only on that meeting for like the second half due to an internet problem, but
I believe we also had some prior minutes that still needed approval.
I think so too. I just gotta find that email.
Yeah.
So, do we want to discuss the meeting on the 6th? The minutes for the 6th? I was remote.
March 6th.
March 6th.
March 6th.
Yes. Joe, the comment that you sent me on the 13th, was that in relation to the meetings for March 6th or the 21st or whatever the meeting before that was?
I think it was the 6th.
That was the
Okay.
one before.
There was some from the one before, but I think I had one on the 6th.
And I am just realizing that you only sent that to me.
Like I was supposed to.
No, but I can't act any. That was after I was elected. No longer co-chair.
Change the rules.
It is very true.
Standing precedent.
So I believe it was in relation to the 6th, because it was immediately after Ron sent out his meeting minutes. And I will... I believe... the comment was... I don't like Google. So Joe, do you mind if I just read what you mentioned?
I mean, I can just paraphrase it. Basically, it's that last paragraph.
Last paragraph of the,
I'm opening the document. Give me a second.
Is it the Kyle Barker also advised ... or the Ray Peoples noted that ...
It's the agenda item paragraph. At the very end.
Oh, okay.
It was basically just around the fact that it cites how kind of one person felt about it. I think it should include how other people felt about the particular agenda item.
isn't that covered in the last sentence?
I'm sorry, what paragraph are you talking
On the agenda item paragraph, on the very last page.
There was a conversation about the suggested agenda item.
Yep.
There's just a lot more detail about how Ron felt about it than how other people felt about it. There's one sentence that other people thought it should stay, and that's it. But there's half the paragraph is dedicated to how you felt about it. So my point is, if we're going to mention how a particular person feels about it, we need to include the rest of the discussion as well, in that level of detail.
I don't think there was much other discussion, other than the other comments were added to the agenda.
So
Consensus added to the agenda.
So I think instead of adding this much detail in the minutes, I think the minutes should just be detailing out a conversation was had about it as, on the agenda, and leave it as that. I believe that was the path that we were trying to take previously.
You want to avoid opinions and feelings in your minutes. If
Well,
somebody wants.
That's my point, basically.
So, I mean, like, a lively discussion was had, and anybody who wants to go see what that discussion said can go watch the video.
Yeah.
I'll cut it down if you want, but my objection was that it was voted not to include looking at both at the same time, and that then there was a item that should have been subject of debate before it was drafted and considered for the agenda was moved forward. That was my point, and that's what was reflected here. However, the committee said the consensus therefore was to add it to the agenda the next meeting.
So it's from the meeting before, right, where we decided, the decision was to be just a renovation,
Correct.
right? And not necessarily a renovation and include the redistribution as part of that.
Yes, we had actually made a motion. There was a motion made to consider moving both the renovation and the redistribution, and that was voted down. And the suggested item that was talked about for consideration addressed just that specific activity. And that's why I put so much discussion of the objection to it. And I was the one that brought it up, no one else did.
So I guess I'll leave it to the rest of the committee, because I can't make a motion or vote at this point.
I mean, I would motion that we reduce it to just, the discussion was had about being able to bring agenda topics like that, and the committee felt that it was fine. The objection was noted that there was an objection to it, but the majority said it was fine to bring things to agenda items that people may have pre-drafted for consideration.
One of the things I'd like to, I'll make that change. But on that note, we do need to have a discussion about how things get on the agenda. Because there's a lot of things I put on and asked for, never get onto the agenda.
Well, I think as we go forward, the board is gonna come up with a new set of guidelines for this committee, and I think it'll be a little bit tighter than now. It's been fairly freewheeling, which I prefer, honestly, but I think we need to sort of put some belts and suspenders around it and make sure that we have our stuff together as we move this forward. Honestly, I don't think that will be, I don't believe that's on the school board agenda for tomorrow.
No, I didn't see it.
But that's something that we'll probably have as part of it, at least a little bit of a discussion tomorrow.
I mean, it's on
Maybe
very
I'll-
generically, FIC operations discussion, you know, so.
One other change to the minutes for Ron, that just the last sentence.
Yes.
Dan Mitchell noted that it may be required to initiate the nomination process of the selection of a new citizen co-chair.
Next meeting may require.
And again, I think that's
Noted.
tied to what happens at the school board tomorrow.
Well, and also at the time, Dan wasn't elected, but all signs pointed, I wanted to tee the committee up that we may have to reinitiate the nomination process for a new citizen co-chair.
Can we just change the word would to may?
Well, I never said that we'd be selecting one at this meeting, because the way it was, it would be one meeting we'd nominate, and then the next meeting there'd be the selection process.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be at the next meeting.
So
Maybe
Dan
it's-
Mitchell noted that the next meeting may require the initiation of the nomination process for the selection of a new citizen co-chair.
Okay.
Any other comments on the minutes? We'll entertain a motion.
Or are you gonna redistribute?
I'll send it back out.
We can, yeah, but we'll just do the motion as updated or edited, as amended, I think it's the right word.
That's what I was asking.
Mhm, yeah.
I move to accept the minutes with the revisions noted.
Do we have a second? Second.
Discussion?
Discussion, right? Hearing none? All those in favor say aye?
All right.
Aye, I'm voting yes, I guess. Aye,
I'll
Matt?
abstain.
So how many voting do we have here
Yep.
tonight?
Show of hands, please.
For what is
This- For aye, yeah.
For the minutes, yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. You're voting tonight, 6. So we got 6 then, right?
Yep. And 1 abstention.
Or any noes?
Any noes? Nobody else, I think, is out. Either not voting.
Okay.
What about on the lawn?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Non-voting.
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 Okay.
Okay.
And then we have the previous one that was, what, the 225? And that was the one Dan sent out after the revisions?
Has everybody had a chance to look at the revisions from the 25th?
I'll make a motion to accept the 25th notes as edited and sent out by Dan.
Seconded.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
I'm abstaining.
Okay, so same thing,
Yep,
6,
6-1.
okay, 601, okay.
Mr. Chairman, now that Dan has been elected, do we have a problem with having 3 school board members here with a quorum?
I'm non-voting. I can't
He's not-
vote in anything.
He's
not
just
sworn
be
in.
the
But your
president of the
quorum
meeting.
for a school board meeting is 3.
Yeah, I don't think that we.
the school board yet.
You haven't been sworn in yet?
No, that's tomorrow morning.
Okay.
So, and I don't think there'll be 3 on the, on this committee. when
There
we
will
start.
not, yeah, there won't be 3 moving forward on the committee.
Okay, that's fine.
I didn't even think of that.
Okay.
But it's an interesting thought.
It was a good catch, it was a good catch. though.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, you always have to be careful with quorums.
Right.
That'd be a splendid school board meeting.
Budget
Yeah,
committee's
I'll have to
meeting
get
then.
together
Can't have certain
at some
cookouts in
point,
town without
Budget
causing
committee's
a.
got
I got
Yeah, you should have seen,
Two
you should have
emails
seen
from
Chief
Andrew,
Jones
stuff
as
to do.
swearing in last year.
Email from you, so it's like
Everybody's
just trying to get it
opposite
all.
sides of the building.
as-
I think Friday show, I haven't emailed you back, I'm just waiting to hear from my own dad about.
Yeah,
All right, so,
that's fine.
you wanna keep going, or you want me to?
You can jump in, Matt.
All right, so moving forward, we will have to elect a new citizen co-chair. I don't know if we should just wait until the next school board, after the next school board meeting to do that.
I think we should wait till the next FIC is,
Yeah, because we don't even know which one of us, like, who's
Yes.
gonna be from the school board on this, so we will do that, probably at the next meeting. We have a school board meeting tomorrow, so probably at the next meeting after that. Or,
Next FIC meeting after tomorrow's school board meeting.
right,
right. Are we gonna be discussing, do you know, are we gonna be discussing committee assignments next meeting?
it's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda,
I
yeah.
haven't seen
But
it yet.
Andrew's not gonna be there.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll keep you posted on that. So I think what our plan was for today was to continue the conversation that we had left off with at the last meeting. I think we were running over, so we had ended at the very hot topic of, are we in a place where we want to start formulating a recommendation to the school board one way or the other, including whether that involved combination of suggestions. And Joe had drafted something that I think everyone had read. So we had some strong feelings about that. Does anyone want to chime in on what they're?
I think we need to take a step back and have some discussion about what the election said,
What the election said.
the results of the election. I think it was quite clear that cost is a major driver in decisions now in the town. Both the operating departments failed, never seen that.
I know, I have not seen that either.
And the police station
I
went
think
down,
early years, but it's been a long time.
right, went down in a 10-alarm fire. And I think what it says to me is that, and I'm gonna take a step back, I actually thought Kyle's, Barker's presence last week actually pointed out some things that we, and more importantly, the school board needs to do. There needs to be some specific direction as to what is the criteria that we're looking to address. And that really weighs in. And the point being is, right now, if we go out and just put together an RFP to go out and have somebody come in and tell us what it would look like to do X, Y, and Z, there's no direction to what that is trying to solve. As for instance, and I'll go back to also what Dan brought up last week, is that currently you are 9 classrooms short. But that's if we have to get rid of the portables. So one of the big questions in my mind is that a given or not? Is the portables have to go? It
I don't think
really,
anybody's
so you,
saying they have to go anywhere.
huh?
Why would, we're not saying they have to go anywhere, like, we don't,
That's my point. Can they continue to be used for elementary education?
possibly, that's part of the solution. That's why I think, like, going to the RFP to see what our options are, like, we made a list. We had that list of needs.
No, we really don't. It's not, and.
We have 3 reports that tell us what the needs are just for the maintenance purposes. And then we made a list of, Dan went through a whole list of what he needs educational wise.
Right,
We did do that.
I do agree that we need an understanding of the portables, because that is a big player. There are gonna be people in town who say, we own them, they're in decent shape, let's keep, there are others who are gonna say, they're not connected to the building, it's a safety hazard, we need to get rid of them. So you're gonna have a wide range of things, so we have to, we should agree, before we go tell an architect, figure out our plans, that's,
But that's what they're experts in, why are we gonna dictate that to them?
because that's a user constraint, that's not a.
No, it's not. We're gonna tell them, these are our needs. We need some more classroom space, we need,
So they'll say keep the portables, so are we gonna agree to keep the portables?
How much classroom space do we need?
he detailed that he needs 9 classrooms.
Is that true or not? Do we actually agree on that?
So we've kind of, I think, stated in here that we're gonna rely on the educational professionals to tell us what they need, because we're not in a place
Oh, I-
to.
Sure, but you can have a discussion of how many kids go in a classroom.
We can
We
absolutely.
can say, are we
But
putting
that's not a
16 in a
decision we get to
classroom, or are
make.
we putting 20 in a classroom? That comes down to
That's a
like,
school board decision, that's not our decision.
Well, I think the thing that happened
It's not our
last week is Carl Barker actually said about 4 different times is that he didn't get direction sufficiently from the school board
so we made assumptions.
and made a bunch of assumptions that turned out to be wrong.
Right.
And but stop and think about it. That means that we need to come up specifically with what we are gonna ask include in an RFP as far as details of how anybody's respond.
I agree, I think that's the point of what we need to
And
talk
I think we
about.
got there at a high level list, right? Like, we didn't get into like writing a paragraph about each one and the details that it is, but that's what you get into when you start writing the RFP. We have a high level list of needs right now.
I don't think you've codified it down enough to actually say what would be in the RFP. Are you gonna write it? Here's a question for you. Is the RFP gonna say, you look all the way from just repairs to a $28 million
The list
addition with a
of needs will
renovation?
include the repairs.
What are they? Tell me what they are.
They're the whole list out of the onsite inside report and the
Well, but
HL turn report.
Yeah, but that's $4,000 worth of work. That's all that is.
Well,
That's not the point. It's not about the
Well,
cost.
man,
It's
sorry.
about, this is your list of needs. I don't care what it costs.
What-
Your list of
Well-
needs is what they are. It's defined in the
Yeah, well-
reports. Like, what are you arguing about?
I agree with you. That's,
It's right, yes, I understand, it's in the report, I
It's-
don't
it's-
understand. You've been throwing these reports in our face for the last 6 months. Now we're saying, here's the report with the list of needs, let's go find out what it's gonna cost, and you're saying no.
Okay.
You don't know what we need to fix.
we do need, well, we know we need to repair.
right.
And it's on the list of needs, what are you talking about?
I think,
Repair.
I
That's the
think,
difference. See, that's,
I think that one aspect of what we've talked about is, identifying, I think at the last meeting, Kyle really highlighted the, what did he refer to it as, the educational programming that has to come from the district.
educational specifications.
Right, so that has to come from the district and the school board, right? Like, so that's definitely one thing that we have to hone in on to get to an RFP. I agree with that. I do think that there was some element of our prior discussions, correct me if I'm wrong if anyone feels differently, but I think there was some element of our prior discussions where we said, we have these lists, and there may be a component of it that says, hey, what does it look like if we are addressing all of these things, including bringing the portables into the main building, and then, based off of that information, we can go a step further with them and say, okay, well, we don't think that budget's gonna work, so what could we shift, right? That was my understanding of where we were gonna have to.
The difficulty with that, and I'll just explain it to you, is Kyle Barker gave us the estimates here, and he affirmed that they are still in the ballpark. Remember that the estimate to remove the 50s and 60s building, replace the classrooms that are needed, is $28 million. And that's pretty reasonable number when you stop. It's 26 classrooms that have to be built. So the other side of that is, okay, what's a renovation with replacing 9? Well, that's closer to what Bo did. That's $13 million, but you gotta add $1.5 million because they had already done $1.5 million for roof and HVAC system, so that's 15. So there's kind of the range for that. And then just to fix it is $4 million, or fix it with the 1930s building, that's $5 million. So that's really the range. So we need to decide on what do you think the price is that we're targeting.
Why do we
No.
need to decide that?
Well,
That's what an RFP tells me. I go out for RFP and I get a price on something. I do it every day at work.
but between you and the fence post, Joe, what do you think,
I'm not gonna speculate on what the price could be. That's not my job.
well, you already have that as far as a
We have not
From
put out an
engineers.
RFP. We have asked for reports about a needs assessment of the building on repairs and what needs to be fixed. We do not have an RFP that says, here are our needs. Give it to a design build company and say, how do we solution this and what does it cost?
what do you, just walk me through what you envision the RFP process and the selection of that entity to do.
I give them my needs list and a descriptive RFP of these are my needs, which will include all of the on-site, in-site stuff, as well as all the educational needs detailed by the administration. And I hand that out and they come back with, here's a design that we think can work to address the majority of your needs, and here are the costs. And part of that RFP will be asking them for details of what each piece of it costs, so that we can start saying, well, we're gonna have to cut that, we're gonna have to cut this to get it within a budget that's acceptable.
What is acceptable budget?
I don't know, that's not for me to decide.
Somebody's gotta decide.
That's the school board's job, that's why they
Well,
write the
all right,
RFP.
I asked the school board to tell us what the budget is.
The school board hasn't decided that either.
I know,
Right, so they need a reference, which is what the RFP gives you.
so that's the point. But we do know the range of our options
You know
are
your
all the way
range.
from
With
28
no
to
design,
4.
yeah, so you know a range, that doesn't help you.
Four is not a real number, four is not a real number.
I disagree with you, 100%.
Right, we've had this conversation like 5 or 6 times, where we'll have the conversation, we'll say, but you acknowledged that when she came in and presented that report, that she also acknowledged that there were,
Quite a few things neglected.
quite a few things that were not included in that report, right? But you're still anchoring as, continuously in a public forum, anchoring people's beliefs that there's a $4 million solution that solves our problems,
There
which
is.
that's not even true.
I asked her many questions in that meeting that she came to, and there was a lot of assumptions made about replacing things in kind
What-
and not digging into the details of some things.
What did I ask you, the school board, back in July? I asked you to hire an engineering firm to be able to specifically go in and look at that and find out if that is anywhere near correct. And that was before we had the on-site insight report. We only
That's
had
what
the
I'm talking about
HRQ.
doing. You're
Well,
gonna
no,
hire, you're
that's-
gonna put on RFP, and then one of the things is gonna be, fix the HVAC system. It's on your list of needs, because it's in the on-site insights report. They're gonna give you a number for that.
You need,
Right, I think Ron's point is though, and Matt's point too, is correct. I think the $4 million that they put in there, or $5 million with the 30s, that includes the in-kind. Well, there's probably not gonna be boilers, there's probably not gonna be just,
Right.
a 1940s HVAC system, that's gonna be more than $4 or $5 million.
It's
What
a
that number is-
replacement plan more than it is a repair
Right,
plan.
it's not bringing it up to $1.5 I'm not gonna say code, but bringing it up to today's technology. So it's gonna be more than that. The question is, to Ron's original point is, and I said this before, my belief is that there needs to be a number that will pass. May not be everything that's on the list,
Agreed.
we say, okay, if we can give them everything, and if they come back and say it's $28 million, I would venture to say that would not pass.
I would agree.
Right, I think we're.
But that's why you get a detailed list of what everything
So
costs.
I think you and I are very close,
You
and
can start
maybe
cutting
it's the
things
top
out.
10 educational things that are on there, or whatever it is. We put together a list of these, what the group thought was the top 10, and really, it should be decided by the educators who know which would be,
I don't
their
know.
10 may be different than our
No
10.
offense, Dan, like, if the budget, if the pricing comes back and you can only get 6 classrooms? Sorry,
Yeah.
you can't have 9, you can have 6, is that better than none?
Honestly, like, when this whole conversation started, I expected that we put it all out, and they say, this costs exorbitant amount, and we say, okay, well, what happens if we take this out?
Right,
And this
I
out,
understand.
and
That's-
this out,
I think
and
that, I
this
think
out.
that's the way we need to go. I think that's what Bo did, basically, right, Brian, is
Yeah.
that type of thing.
But you can shorten the process by saying, hey, we got $10 million to work with.
But I
We
don't
have
think we
15
know,
million.
I don't think we know though.
Oh, really? Because
We
I'm
don't-
pretty
we don't.
sure it's not gonna be 15 million. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be lower than that.
That's,
What will
that's
happen.
fine.
So
right,
why
that's fine, but-
why even start at a potential $28 million building? Hey, we need these improvements. We believe the upper limit of what taxpayers in this town will spend is $18 million. Why go to 28 just to bring it back
I mean,
down?
like we've talked about, we talked about going design build, right? So,
Right.
so
So-
the 28
But if you give
million
them a
was.
budget, it's easier for them to start that process. Otherwise,
No,
like,
but see, I disagree on that, right? Like, I totally get what you're saying, and if you give them everything that you want, and they can give you pricing on all of it, then you can say to yourself, okay, my budget is 12, what can I get off this list for 12?
Where can you line things up?
Where can I line it up to get what I want for 12? At least you now have all the information to give you, because it doesn't hurt them in any
Well,
way
the
to
other
give you
thing-
more information than you need.
except we pay by the hour,
And
so.
the
We're
other
not
thing-
paying for these are RFPs, they're responding to us, we don't pay for that.
Yes, you
You're
do,
not
Joe,
gonna-
you won't get, you won't get the detail you're talking about.
The other
I'm
thing
not
that we.
paying people to give an RFP.
No,
I
but
ne-
you're
I don't
not
do that at
gonna-
work ever.
Yeah, me either.
Wait, what do you expect an RFP to respond? What do you
Give me
think?
your proposal and your bid for this project.
No, you won't get a bid.
There's not enough.
You won't get a bid.
So there's one other piece
You
that we
don't,
do.
you
I
don't get
work in
bids.
construction all the time, I get bids just like this every day.
Only when you have enough specifications to bid on something.
And
That's what we don't have.
That's what we're gonna put in the,
So we're gonna, under this,
what do you think, we're just gonna send out a blank spreadsheet of like random words? You're gonna write an RFP that describes each of your needs. My need is a new HVAC system, it has to meet these criteria. Write it out.
How many classrooms?
If he says it's 9, then I'm gonna write out an RFP that says I need 9 additional educational classrooms that meet these dimensions.
Well, that's
is
9 if
that
we
not-
remove the
right.
50s and 60s building.
Or it was.
I'm just saying.
The
if-
portable.
if-
Yeah,
whatever,
the
I don't know what the
portable.
number
Right,
is. The number could be 9, it could be 30, I don't care.
Which realistically is
How
not
much
more,
for
you
this
just say,
many?
I need a total of
right,
25 classrooms.
Exactly.
right.
Not more, because then you could say, hey, we can actually salvage these, we can keep the portables,
Right.
and now you only need to build 4.
Right.
Or, like, because if you're saying,
But-
if I'm looking at an RFP that says, I need to add 9, I'm bidding adding 9.
Well,
Well,
and
it depends
that's,
on how you add those 9 though, right? Like, is it
But-
a separate building?
But my
Or do you
assumption,
repurpose some of the space you have?
but if I'm doing an RFP against 4 other buildings, I'm gonna assume we're all doing, adding 9 buildings, otherwise mine, and then I have additional information, and or I don't have enough information, if I'm doing apples to
This-
apples.
Right, I think
That's,
that's,
so
I
that's
think that's a very
detail,
good
that's
Right.
detail in the
when you're
language
putting
though,
out-
right?
But
Like
that-
which is a good,
yeah, that comes down to working closely with the person that's writing the RFP about assumptions.
right.
So,
I'm sorry.
so the aspect is, I don't think, does the school board hire out like a contractor in a design build firm to help write the RFPs?
So,
Typically, no, it would be the business administrator, but, you know, in this instance like this, there would be probably a lot of communication with other people who have done similar things. Like, for example, like an obvious person for Julie, our business administrator, to reach out to is Dwayne at Bo, who just wrote 2
Just
years
hand me
ago.
your RFP.
An RFP,
Exactly,
right?
that's
Like,
what I need.
Find
and
a different
like,
place.
yeah, so, and then other people who have done recent buildings. I mean, when you're talking school, these type of projects in this state, there is a handful of people who are gonna bid on it, right?
Right.
That, and there's limited number of school districts and a limited number of people who are gonna bid on it. They all look roughly the same, these type of RFPs.
The other thing that I just wanted to point out is if we go the route of saying, here's the things that we need, tell us what this looks like, and we have the details of, okay, well, this piece of it costs this piece of it costs that, so we can start talking about those things. The other thing we can do is we can then go with that information back to the public and say, here's the information we have so far. What is your feedback on some of this information too, right? So that way we're not just, trying to guess in this room as to what the budget is, right? If they come back, if the information comes back and says, well, everyone's supporting $10 million, then we know, okay, we have the information in front of us, we have to make whatever cuts it takes to get these things. Maybe they'll respond back, maybe depending on what we have in front of us, maybe we'll be able to ask specific questions like, hey, if we cut this, this, and this, it would allow us to bring the portables in. Do you want us to cut this, this, and this to bring the portables in? We can get some public feedback.
You get more granular in your level of importance once you have the information of what it's gonna cost you to do that.
And you can
Yeah,
engage.
if we go back and look at re-engineering and reimagining GMS, right? Everybody who went to those meetings was, for the most part,
In this room right now.
all
No, I
for
didn't
it.
go.
Was all for it,
I
right?
didn't,
So,
I didn't attend
not
this single
and
one.
that, I think that gave everybody a false sense of security that it was gonna pass, and it failed badly. And to
That's fine,
to
but at
Ron's
some
point,
point, but at some point we
what
have to-
happened at the most recent election was, I've never seen both budgets fail. I wasn't surprised, I guess, that the police station failed, it didn't seem to have a lot of support out there, but a lot of stuff failed.
I think that's all the more reason to get as much detail on exact costs as we can.
Agreed,
Being vague
but
in
I
a
also think we
range
have to be
doesn't
real.
help us.
I agree we should get a price, but then
I
maybe
don't
it's
agree
the
with you.
school board job to say, okay, the design build guy comes in, he says it's $28,000, and maybe before it even becomes a conversation, the school board needs to look at it and say, is that gonna pass?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I
And
think that that's
if the school board doesn't
You're
think it's the
talking
best,
exactly
What did you
Right.
just say? If we get a response that says 28 million?
right, then I think the school board has to
Just
decide if they want.
wait just a minute. You cannot put RFPs out on the street that require an entity to spend a whole bunch of money responding and then disregard what you put out there on the street.
Yes, you can.
Sure you
No,
can.
you can't, because they're gonna jack up the price when you go for the actual construction, because they're gonna recoup that money somehow.
I don't have to award it, like, they're gonna bid, the 5 companies bid, I'm
So
only gonna
you're
award it to
become
one.
So then we become the problem school district where everybody puts a premium on our pricing of 10% to recover because we keep asking nuisance RFPs.
No, it wouldn't be a nuisance RFP, it would
That-
be,
that's how-
again, we're gonna take this, and this out.
That's how I do
You're
it in
gonna have-
commercial.
You're gonna have 5 bidders.
Yeah, and you have a
primarily.
lot bigger
Yeah, there's only 6
pockets.
companies in New Hampshire right now.
Yeah, you're gonna have 5 bidders,
Well, I don't think
and you're
it'd be
only
able to-
picking one of them.
I don't think.
And then
we'd
you're
be
gonna
looking
pick
at
pieces
scrap.
of their proposal.
Okay, okay.
So the other 4 companies just spent all that money for nothing, they didn't get an award.
That's a risk they
You're
take
not
when they
paying
bid.
you're not paying
Right.
5 companies to do an
No,
RFP,
if you
that's
decide,
unheard of.
if you go through the process and when you say, hey, everything's too expensive, we're not doing it, the next time we go through it,
But my thought is that we're not gonna be, if they're able to provide the level of like, okay, these are the things, and maybe there is a cost associated with it, that's fine, that's something that we have to evaluate, if there's a cost associated with getting that level of detailed estimate, but at least then we have the information as to, these are the pieces, they cost, roughly in this
what
much.
you're
You're
talking
actually-
about are pre-construction services that you're looking to get in an RFP, and that doesn't work that way.
It doesn't, exactly right.
Okay.
And what you need to do, if you want to do it correctly, you need to go hire an engineering firm that works with you to start answering these questions. Then you hire a construction manager when you decide where you are, then get your final guaranteed maximum price, when you decide what you want to do. Design build works fine when you have decided what you're going to build. And it's definitive. Okay, it's a bridge over this river and it's gonna carry 5 lanes of traffic. Okay, that's pretty definitive.
So,
I can put that on the street and get a whole bunch of people bidding on
Nobody's
it.
saying we're not gonna give that
So,
level of detail in an RFP.
God knows how long ago, it all blends
What do you
together
think
now.
you're gonna say, like, you keep, no,
Is-
you keep
A
shrugging
while
everybody
ago,
off.
you suggested about trying to get a request into the school board about getting an RFP out to obtain an NTE number, right, not to exceed number, for whatever recommendation we come up with. Is that the time that we bring this up and go for it?
I don't know, I mean, this conversation's going like.
Well,
a couple
Well,
weeks
again,
ago.
but I mean,
that's what you mean by
if we go
Explain
down,
what you just, I don't know what you meant.
So there was conversations Matt and I had months ago, definitely months ago, about Kyle Barker suggested a number for him to come up with a not to exceed for whatever project we put forward. So Matt and I discussed, probably not the time to bring it up and time to put it before the committee to say we recommend doing this. Now I'm coming back with, if we're trying to figure out what is a not to exceed number and we have a project in mind, then it would be, is now the time to go out and go get that service with an engineering firm or an architect firm to say, to do this project, itemized out, should never exceed this, and then we get the itemized detailed cost, and then we can start crossing it all out.
Well, what's that number? I mean, that's what,
But
to
whose
Kerry's
number
point and
is
my
that?
point is,
Like-
if we just say, we have X number of dollars to spend, that the
Right.
board, this group feels will pass, then this is what we want. What can you do for this?
So,
Is that an NTE?
so that, well,
Stated
a not to
differently.
exceed number, right, so that would become the final not to exceed number that the school board should pursue.
But you can't get that number until you actually go through 50% design.
You can,
I-
yes,
But
I will
again,
agree with
whose
that,
numbers
yeah.
are those? That firm you hired to come up with those numbers is not the one actually hammering the nails? Those
Correct.
numbers mean nothing, because it's not the person who's actually doing the work.
No, that's not true, Joe.
No,
Yes,
that,
it is.
I worked in the engineering for 40 years. I
So
designed a whole bunch of
You would
things.
do work at somebody else's price?
What?
You would do
They
work at somebody else's
have-
price?
No,
What do you mean somebody else's price?
There's data points, you can say, if I'm building a building, it should cost me all in $450 a square foot.
We were.
How that allocates out between my tile guy, my mason guy, my rough guy, my finish carpentry, that's all up, my electrician, that's all built into the $450 a square foot that I've allocated over, that I have determined.
Yeah, and the actual builder comes in and says it's $550.
But these guys should
Now
have
what are
the
you gonna
data based on all current projects. They're tracking that information. They know, based on what they're building, how much it roughly costs to build. We went through this with the fire department. We were able to go through and say, hey, we carried an allowance for this, but if we scale back here, here, and here, we can get within it. There was not one subcontractor in that office. It was the builder, it was the engineers, and it was the architects.
Was it the builder that actually did the building?
Yes.
Okay, that's
It
what
was a
I'm talking about.
design-build contractor. He developed it, and he bid out to his contractors who backfilled the shore.
Right.
That's the number he carried. He didn't need his electrician in there to say,
Agreed.
build the.
But we don't have a builder.
So,
Because
but-
we don't have anything to build.
You
Because
don't have
no
a-
matter
you have an
what
idea.
you would say, let's put out an RFP. You don't have it narrowed down enough for a builder,
So-
because he can build a $250 square, well, he could, but we would hate it, $250 square foot, or $600 square foot. Those are different buildings. So unless he knows what he's working with, it's gonna change how he designs it.
Well, and that's what I mean, right, is we go through that process of hiring an engineering firm, a build architect, for us to go through our needs and say, here's what it's gonna cost, itemize it, and then, all right, here's the scope of the RFP to go put out for bid and compete to build.
Can I just make an observation about because Peter, like one thing that you said that's kind of sticking with me is like the whole thing about the reimagining GMS. And I think we have to like kind of go backwards and think about like what, sort of where things failed. And I think that, that was all happening after the RFP was already out. I mean, that was all done. That was like.
People didn't attend because they
The
were
first
voting no.
RFP.
What's that?
People didn't attend because they were voting no.
Right, but the point is, like, that was the point at which the wheels were already in motion, apparently, for a net zero, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
the team
That's
had already been
right.
assembled.
But I think there too is an element of the school board wasn't listening, because people were telling the school board, this is never going to pass. And they look, oh yeah, it will, and
Okay.
it's never, yeah,
But I don't think it was
So-
approached, in the way that we're talking about right now, which is, we're talking about, okay, we've identified and we can hone in more on, here's where we think our deficiencies are, here's what the things that we would like to try to fix. And if we can look at those on a more granular level with with someone who can factor in what the actual costs are, then we can sort of back into something that's, hey, these are the actual things. Community, how do you feel about these particular things? That's a lot different than the reimagining GMS, in my opinion. Because reimagining GMS was, the wheels were already in motion, the RFP was already
Oh, yeah.
done, right? We're talking about,
It was just one of the design details of the new school.
It was a
Right.
formality.
What does it need to look like?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
there
agree with you.
there was a component of it that was, we can evaluate 9 options, right? Like, they did go through that, but the bottom line is, there was already a design team in place that was a net zero, high efficiency, New York-based design team, that we were not gonna be able to get something at the.
Can I take a step back? And I want to go back to the election too. You need to I take great interest in what failed and what passed. I find it extremely interesting that the maintenance request passed. It's maintenance. But what failed is the article to put into the capital reserve that had the words new build and renovation in it. That failed. And the solar array failed.
Well, are you surprised that the solar array failed, honestly?
Well,
No, but
it was
I am-
it was a poorly written article, let's be completely clear.
I
It was a
am-
badly written article.
I think you need to understand, is A, in fact,
It was too limiting.
I know.
We talked about this in deliberate,
We
it was
did,
bad.
we did, I agree.
yeah, anyhow. But the point being is the maintenance item passed. The one that had renovation and new in it failed. If that isn't a survey question, I don't know what is.
But we're not
I
gonna
don't think
base-
that's a
we-
survey question.
no.
That article is specifically the plan that's outlined in the voter guide, as we sold that article that passed, was to do long-term capital need planning with the target being the roof at Campbell. So we don't end up in the situation that GMS
Yes, exactly
is
right.
in.
So people said, I'll maintain the buildings.
Yeah, they'll maintain
Correct.
the building that's in much better shape than GMS.
No, you didn't say what, you.
That the
No,
voter
I
guide
don't think that
said,
changes
The
anything.
voter guide addressed.
I don't disagree with you on that front, but like, I don't think that changes any of our direction.
Yeah, it does.
well, what it
Doesn't.
Ron's,
I wanna
Ron's
know
point- Ron's-
exactly, from a contractor that's gonna walk in there and do the work, what it's gonna cost to replace that HVAC system.
What it changes-
Not some engineer's estimate or some, reporting firm's estimate. I want from Dan's HVAC to come in there and tell me exactly what
I
that's
have
gonna
a, I have a
cost.
question for you. We hired On-Site Insight, and they do this for a living. And that's all they do, and they're nationally known. Do you think their numbers are magnitudes off?
I think there's a lot of stuff missing from their report, yes. and
Their
she said it in
numbers
that meeting.
are if we were to fix everything.
And
Right? We're
that's-
developing a capital
that's the
plan
point.
in like kind.
But you also
And we
can't-
may
And
not
that's-
even be able to get some of that
But
stuff
to
anymore.
your point though,
But
I'd be
till
cautious.
till
just
you
what-
look at it, you don't know the answer, and I will stand up in front
I
of
was walking
every
around with
meeting.
her, Ron, and she said, your boiler system for this school is ineffective, right? It's obsolete and ineffective.
Right.
No way would anyone come in and just do this system over again, right? Like, we have to accept that, right? Like, that the way that building has been Frankenstein together over almost 100 years at this point is not an efficient model to maintain that building for the long
But the
term.
way to sell that will be, if we spend $2 million, we'll make it back in 7 years by the reduced heating and whatever costs.
I'm
So-
not trying to sell any of
but-
that. I'm just trying to
that-
say, like, that building
But
is
to your point, about
not
going to the
efficient.
HVAC guy, like, but that doesn't account for any ceiling tiles, for any
Right.
roofing stuff.
Correct.
That's why you have to go to the GC or the design build company, because they'll factor all of that in total.
Yep.
So I hear what
Yes.
you're coming from,
I
but I
get
would
that.
go to the mechanical guy, which is why
But if that's,
realistically.
if that was all, I was using that as an example for all we're gonna fix, but if
But
we're
me-
doing them all,
But maybe what you really need to do is talk to some design build that does pre-construction, develop a relationship and say, hey, this is where we're at, what do you propose? Because otherwise we're going out with an unclear specs, unclear expectations. What I want is gonna be different than what you want, than what he wants. Or we're not gonna have a clear defined thing. So develop the relationship, have him guide through the or her, whoever, guide through the process in advance
see,
of
that's
this.
where I guess I just differ on opinion, like I want to hear different opinions from different firms on how we can address these problems. Right? If one company comes in and says, my solution is bulldoze this section, build a new section over here, raise this up another level, okay, that's your solution, but his firm comes in and says, you take the 1930s building, you redo that, you take the courtyard, you turn that into classrooms, you take the stage, you turn that into another classroom.
But without specifying what constraints are, like money, you're gonna have a wide range, because you could do anything.
And that's where the detail of their proposal comes
You won't
in.
get any responses that have that type of response to it.
Because
I
I'm,
disagree.
No, you won't, you absolutely won't.
Well, and if that happens, then that
Oh,
happens.
hey, Dan, did you get the estimate for the locks yet?
No, I followed up with Dave. Dave said that the contract, the locksmith contractor was supposed to be back in district either this week or next week, so he was gonna follow up.
Okay, 'cause-
Like I said, I gave the business card to the guy,
yeah,
and then I didn't take his business card. Rookie move.
well, Dave, you ought to reach out to him, because it's, you know,
Yeah, no,
would you?
if you figure out how to catch Dave Ross, let me know.
Well, that guy probably can.
He's,
Yeah, next time I see Dave, I'll put the pressure on him to get a number.
Well, okay, because that's some safety item that's hanging out there.
so when I was doing like my buyouts and my bids, I had to baseline each one of them so there'd be apples to apples. My scope sheets, how do I take this guy's proposal and compare it to this guy's proposal? Based on what you're proposing, I wouldn't be able to do that. So like, this guy might be assuming brand new build, this guy's assuming as small budget as possible. They're not gonna be doing, they're gonna make different assumptions, you're gonna have wildly different things. People are like, oh, I love the brand new school, that's great. This guy will be like, oh, I can do it for $12 million, but you have to accept that you're only getting half of a new building. They're not gonna be the same,
that-
what my thing is, you're
Wouldn't
not
that be part of the
basing.
RFP though, the level
No.
of detail?
Well, I hope,
They-
but we can't
they're-
even decide in here what that level of
Tell you
detail
what,
would be.
you put forward whatever you like,
And that's the
and
problem.
I'll sit back here, and when we're still talking about it in 3 years, then we can do it my way.
So what do you wanna do? You wanna say, okay, go give us a $10 million or $5
I
million?
would start with like, if you wanna be able to compare apples to apples, you have to constrain what you're trying to do. Because otherwise, some guy's gonna assume 20 million's the deal, and other guy's gonna say 30, and some guy's gonna say, well, you know what, I've seen the economy, 12. Wildly different, but you know what, that $25 million guy, if he knew you really wanted 10, may have changed things and made different assumptions. You're setting them up to fail by not giving them the same expectations.
And Kyle mentioned that in the last meeting. Is-
No, I agree with that.
Multiple times.
I agree with that piece of it. I'm wanting to figure out how we can say, these are the things that we're trying to tackle.
Right, and we have,
I
based on
think we-
various projects, we are willing to spend $400 a square foot, we wanna add, whatever. Give me a proposal, and you'll at least have a baseline.
Yeah,
or-
so
I hate putting a price tag on it, cause I'm gonna design to that price tag.
but that's in essence
But
almost
you can
what we
always
need.
add, you can always
Why?
subtract, but at least a
Why do you need to
baseline.
put a price tag on it?
Because you're not gonna get everything.
Of course not, but I wanna know what the price for everything is,
A
and then I'm
lot.
gonna pick and choose what I want.
But what I'm saying is, if this guy if everybody knows that you're constrained by a budget, then you're gonna have very similar
I want the
responses.
most cost-effective plan to achieve these goals.
But what does that even mean? Like, what does that look like? How
What are the goals? I don't know what the goals are.
Well, I
Why
think
do you
that-
keep saying that?
Because I don't! What are
Why
the
don't
goals?
you know what the goals are? You got a stack of reports right there, why don't you know what the goals are?
Ron, the
What don't you know?
goal is, not necessarily my goal, but what the on-site insight report says and everything that was in yellow.
Yes, exactly.
That's the goal.
Right.
Okay.
Like, that's the starting
all right,
point.
I can do that for, I
My-
can do
my-
that for $5 million.
You can add the classrooms for $5 million?
You
Yeah,
could reconfigure the whole building, like the
yeah,
the
no,
spaces.
I can satisfy the,
That's
three
just,
needed classrooms now. by
But you can't change any of the,
1930s.
you can't change any of the layout, you can't centralize
Don't
those
need to.
services.
And
But we're
But that's not what
saying
the
that
goal-
we have
the
these
goal
yellow
is.
items, right, that we set as the goals.
But none of
And
them
Ron,
do,
you're-
short of a new build, none of them do.
your
That's not true.
solution,
No, that's not
but
true.
listen, stop. Your solution may be right? That may be end up what we do. Like, we look at it and go, okay, yep, all right, we need to, this is all not gonna work for us, so we're gonna do just the maintenance stuff, and we're gonna do the 30s building to pick up those 4 classrooms, and that's all we can do at this time. That may be where we get. I wanna collect the data and the detail that helps us get there, and not make assumptions based off other people's work.
And what you need to do, if you're looking at something so wildly different from just looking at what's the minimum to repair that in some sort of stages, in some sort of menu, to $28 million for knocking down the 1950s building and adding on 27 classrooms at 28 million, that is so wildly different that you need to hire an engineering firm that is able to respond to you and say, okay, I'll go out and look at the details in the on-site insight. I'll do the $70,000 study they suggest in here in the HVE system. I'll come back and tell you what that is. I'll do the $70,000 study to look at the 1930s building and give you the details of that. And then you'll have the answer, is it $4 million or is that close to 7 or 8?
But again, you're only,
But also in the same, that's the same firm that will then be able to tell you, okay, what if you did knock down the 50s? How much would that really cost? Is Mr. Barker's estimate somewhere near? This is what you could do. Here's what
We're
I
still
can give you.
talking about another firm that's not actually doing the work.
It's an engineering firm, Joe. It's an architectural firm
Okay, that's
that
great.
designs buildings. It is what,
They don't set the price.
what? They
Actually,
do.
so that's,
They
they
do.
do. So typically the way that this works is you hire an architect or a designer to say, in my instance, I need 10,000 square feet of clean room, class 100 clean room space, right? Designer comes in, says, all right, here's your space, here's all the equipment you need and everything. And then they go out and get contractors to bid on to do the work. Because they basically came in and said, my cost is $1,200 a square foot for the clean room. And then they come in and then they say, all right, so my GC is this, and my electrical and plumbing, and then they bid it out to the subs that way.
That's basically hiring someone to write and run the RFP for us.
Yes. It's a design and engineering firm, that's typically how it's done in commercial.
And that's what we need to do. And that's what I suggested back in July to the school board. Go and hire an engineering firm, because they are the ones that have to put together what's called an engineer's estimate. And their estimate is based upon exactly the same things that a contractor will. They know as well as the contractors, the range of things, of what cost is. And their estimate will be extremely detailed. It'll go down to, as far down as they need to be, so that they're confident within 5% plus or minus of when they get a bid.
so can we take those items that were on the list? Like, particularly the yellow ones, right? Because we know we have the on-site insight report, but the
Right.
yellow things were not on the on-site insight report, because those were our things that we devised after we got that
Yes.
report. Can they also take those things and factor those into what they're
Yes.
suggesting?
We would have to work with them to define what support suite expansion actually means.
Sure.
Is that 1 room, is that 15 rooms?
Right.
Type stuff. But yes, they would be able to say, as a need, right? And this is where I think where Joe is trying to get to is we would be able to say, what do you need in the office redesign? Right? And they will go through, they will help
When you
drive
say
out.
there, you're talking about the engineer. right?
Yeah. So the engineering firm's gonna say, what do you mean by the gym redesign? And they'll go to develop that spec. But to Carrie's point, that's a per hour charge.
Right, exactly, so you're buying somebody's time.
Right. So it'll be a per hour charge, but that to me would be included in the RFP to say, we need an engineering firm. I can't say on retainer, cause I don't
That might
like
be the
on
whole,
retainer.
that might be the whole.
But they can
No,
give you, like,
you
say,
do.
we should be able to do, for 4 weeks worth of time, this is how much it's gonna cost.
Exactly.
Right.
And then every additional hour, we build out at whatever.
Yeah, that's what I typically see is that
And that's
you
the
bid
thing
out
from-
for
And then when it comes to.
250 hours, right? And then it's
Then it's good.
a prorated
Right.
cost after
Yeah.
that.
Well,
So when
no,
it comes to actually choosing who's doing the building, who does that, the engineering firm?
Well,
or
I
you?
think actually my understanding, and tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a builder, is that would be a whole RFP, and then when we got that deliverable, then we would probably do another RFP
Yep, and sometimes
to
they'll,
go get what we
And-
need
and
based
what-
off of what we
and what
got.
you should do,
and sometimes they'll bid on it themselves.
what you should do is the same thing we did back in the town
Without
when I was on that
purchase.
committee. We hired an engineering firm, we went through and developed a schematic plan, we had what's called a schedule of materials. So, even doorknobs and all these
But
things
you
were.
don't need to get that detailed though. If you
Yeah,
don't
we
want to
don't-
build a
No,
building.
hang on, this is, you do need that to get to a guarantee, but
No, you don't. We didn't have that for the fire station, we had a design build with.
whatever, I don't care.
Okay, well, we'll
Whatever.
disagree on that, because design build, you do not need door schedules and knob schedules, you need like, based on experience, this is our budget.
Anyway, point being is the building was designed far enough so that a contractor can say, okay, I have X number of doors, how's that?
No, I'm still saying, You don't need that level.
I think.
For design build.
Design build, because you design it half the time,
The-
you're designing one step ahead of what you're building.
The difficulty comes is that, that would be, in your case, yes, I agree with you, when you know, I'll go back to my bridge. It's 4 lanes across this
Isn't
river.
that what this first RFP with the engineering firm would get us?
No, because you
So
don't
we're
know it's a bridge of 4 lanes over this river.
Isn't
It may
that
be,
what we're?
maybe 2 lanes and it may be a ferry
But
instead.
that's, you can get that evaluated through pre-construction services. Half the times our clients didn't know what they needed until you sat down and talked to them. So you
Well,
can
that-
help guide, that's the whole hourly thing, like, you know
That's
what,
what- that's
this
what-
is a great idea, but you really, you know what? That GMS, no, those portables, we really could make them work if we do this, and you're like, I didn't think of that, that's awesome, maybe we can do that way. So what we go in thinking we need may not be what we actually
That's
need.
exactly what I'm talking
But
about.
that's
Right.
not what you're, we don't get it the way you're proposing.
Yes, that,
However we get there, let's get there.
so I
That
think,
means hiring an engineering firm to answer all these questions for us.
right.
So I'm glad we're on the same wavelength of what we want, we're just trying,
Just say it differently.
I think we're all kind of there, circling back to what you mentioned of, you know, do we need to get an RFP out to get a not to exceed number, which would start with defining what all of that stuff in yellow actually means.
In fact, you don't even need to put an RFP out to quote unquote get it. What you need to do is put out an RFP that details the qualifications of the firm you're gonna select. What it is that you need to have them answer for you and be able to respond. And work with you to get to these different levels of options. And first, look at the big side, you know, help evaluate whether the 50s and 60s can be saved or not. That's the first types of start. Look at the 1930s, give us specific options for that. Create the, you know, kind of, Joe, where you're talking about. I want to get exactly where you want to be, but my experience says you need to go hire an engineering firm or architectural firm to start to work with you and answer these questions. It's, you hire them and they work with you on what you first do is you select your engineering firm based upon the qualifications. That's all you select one. There's no bidding or anything. And what you can do, as I suggested to you, you use what's called a retainer contractor on call. So once you select them based upon the qualifications, you then sit down with them and define the specific scope that you want to work with over the next period of time. And that's where you say, okay, we're gonna look at these options, and how many hours do you think we need to allocate for that? And they come back and say, okay, my electrical team's gonna be this, my civil team's gonna probably spend this, general, this, and our site and civil, and I need to get some geotech, probably $100,000. You negotiate that and say, okay, that's good. We start that process. That's how it works. Then you get all these answers to the questions and begin to be able to say, okay, is on-site inside report anywhere near, or is it closer to 6, 7, or 8 million?
But we also get to a place, if I'm understanding correctly, that we can start to identify the things that are in our wants list and
Yes.
and then we
yes.
can,
Yep.
at
Yes.
those points, we can then try to engage the public again on,
But right.
here's what we're looking
Right.
at, right? Like, we have more concrete information about these pieces.
Something is coming, how
What
much do you wanna
right,
spend?
Right, and where do you want, like, what do you think needs to be the priority, and what needs to be done? Because on the flip side of, you know, looking at the election and saying, well, people only want, like, repairs, right? There is a fair number of people who also wanna see some of the educational needs addressed, right? So I'd rather get the information out to people and say, we've had this engineering firm look at this stuff, and they've detailed out all of the different things that we think as a district we need.
Right.
Now tell us where you think we should.
I think
a couple
And I
questions.
think it has to be like super tight though, because like we can't have these huge blocks of time between that firm coming in and actually someone starting construction, right? Because anything could happen to the economy, you could have another COVID, like who knows, and all of a sudden our numbers are no good anymore.
Well, if
Well,
we keep talking
If
about
it
it,
takes
it'll
us
be
3
another
years to
year.
get there.
Can I ask a
It's a
couple of dumb
problem.
questions?
Sure.
Is there a difference between an engineering firm that you're speaking of and a design build firm that you're speaking of?
Yes.
I would, because mine would be the builder with a team of engineers.
Yes.
And.
And the builder
an
leads.
engineer who has contracts
And-
with the builders.
Okay, and if, I don't know that the school board would ever just pick an engineering group just on their qualifications without knowing what the price is gonna be.
Well, and I think,
We're
So
not,
that's-
we're not a big government agency, we're not
So that-
BAE, we don't have unlimited
Right.
funds. If we have one engineering firm that's an A and they're $100 an hour, and there's another engineering firm that's a B that's $60 an hour, I promise we're gonna go with the $60 an hour. Cause we have limited resources, and every dollar
Well,
we
you have-
spend on that
you have-
is gonna be lost on
you
the
have-
other end.
Right now, you have $300,000 to spend,
Right,
right?
yep, doesn't mean we have to spend it all,
No, but I mean, it's there.
right, agreed.
So-
But we're not gonna, we can't sign a contract, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, that without a price, without an idea what the price is gonna be.
Which is where.
I mean,
you're
I
gonna
would
go.
highly advise you to have a price attached to
But
that
that's where the
contract.
whole,
No,
you know,
no.
I'm gonna allocate,
Here's what-
400 man hours or whatever, they can figure that out too.
That-
They know how long it should take to solve this problem.
yeah, so they'll be able to give us an estimate of how long they think it would take to,
Although if they watch this
to
meeting,
answer
they
those
should probably triple
questions.
it, but-
Well, so I,
It's a smaller group that has to.
right, so, and that would be the thing, is that they would be able to give an estimate of how many hours they think it would take to
Right.
whittle through that list of, you know, to be able to come up to get, I'll say, a reasonable spec.
Well, here's what we ought to do then. You ought to task Julie to go find a whole bunch of sample RFPs that we can look at and see how other people have addressed the same situation.
Yeah, I can certainly ask you to look around, sure.
I mean, because we're just gonna sit here and spin our wheels until we have something to look at.
I don't think this group needs to have the RFP, but
Yeah, no,
But I think the,
Well, who
but I think
does?
the
the school
direction,
board does.
Right,
Right.
everyone writes that, not us.
yeah,
Well, what are we gonna recommend to him, Joe?
That they write an RFP for these. for
So, I
these-
mean,
for
we
this
could-
option.
that they go out and do what we just talked about.
Well, why don't we just make that motion now then?
I
I
can't,
still wanna understand more of the difference between the design build and the engineer firm first.
There's two different,
And how can the design build achieve that, what we're looking for, with an easier transition to actual construction?
Because they are the contractor.
That's what I'm asking, is that
So
the
it's
case
like
and how
what
that
we did over
works?
here, right, when they first, they went through the pre-construction, they put something forward and we said, yeah, that's never gonna pass. So we all went in a room with the contractor who had his architect, his engineers in the building, and we all sat down and said, look, this isn't gonna fly.
You started redlining
So the
things.
engineer is like, you know what, well, we budgeted this much for their HVAC, but if we take out the radiant floor heating, then we can bring it down to here. So everybody in the room, and the contractor who's gonna go out and buy all this stuff, he's got the deals with his subcontractors, is in the room, helping direct where the budget should be. The engineer who's gonna spec it is in the room, so that he's comfortable that when the GC goes and buys it, they're all in line.
Yeah.
So the reality is, design build, at least in my experience, is you don't need 90% drawings, you can start much earlier, because he knows where you're going, and designs, and things change in construction, and so they're more able to make adjustments on the fly to meet your budget, when they, oh shoot, I didn't realize I had to spend an extra 25 grand on fire stopping, that has to come somewhere else, he can make decisions quickly with the client to adjust that change.
So how do we get to that option
but can I ask a
Here's-
question though?
without that
Can I ask
person
a
in the
question that I
middle?
think Ron, to Ron's point, like, the four lane highway point that he made. So like, whereas we have this like list of things that
Right.
like, hey, like,
That's what they started out with, right? They were like, well, we need many more bays than we have now. We need this, and this.
but
And
they
so-
were building something from scratch though.
But it's
Yeah.
still like they had an
you
expectation.
can still do it.
It's still a needs list.
It's still a needs list, and so,
But they have to analyze, like, can the builder then go in and analyze?
well, we said, yeah, that's not gonna work for our budget, and they're like, well, you know what, based on your needs, you really don't need that space. If we do this, and this, rearrange how you store your materials, you can cut off 2 bays, you can reduce this, we can adjust your heating here by adjusting something over here. So to me, it was I'll be biased, I worked design build. So it's going to be, in my experience, a very more streamlined, more quick responsive.
it is.
And that's what I'm going for.
I don't
I like
I don't
that
disagree with you,
plan.
but it's gotta be, you gotta be close enough to what you are gonna build to engage that process.
So that's where you start with pre-construction, right? Like, hey, we need a total of 25 classrooms, we need to service 500 and some
Okay,
odd
so-
kids. We need this, we need a music room, this, and
But
this.
we can't get there. That's the problem. We cannot get there without some independent help.
Well, I think the school could say, we need a music room, we need a gym.
Well,
or
and
like,
that's
We
what
need so many classrooms, they can do the basic, what are we looking for? And the pre-con guy can go, well, you know what, if we take the portables here, and we actually keep them, but we add, say, a covered walkway or a fence to block things in, we can keep those, so now you're down to 5 extra
with a hallway.
buildings. So, like, they'll help, they know what questions to ask, they
But
know
here-
how, they built a bunch of
I wanna
them.
ask a question. How is what you just described different than the list we currently have?
Well, I mean, we have, because right now we're saying add 9 classrooms, we may not need that, we need a total of how many classrooms?
Okay,
Yeah,
change,
yeah.
change that one line.
So
to a total
it's
number of classrooms.
respecing what those yellow items mean.
Reword them in a way that says, at the end of the day, this is what I feel I need.
But
How do we
Bring
get
more
there?
detail to it.
here's the difference. Dan says he's short 9 classrooms, removing the portables.
If we remove the portables. And that's
However-
leaving, and hold on, that's also leaving pre-K through 4 there.
So,
Right. And it's also not removing the 50s and 60s.
Okay.
So if you do that, all of a sudden, you're up to 28 million.
But I think this is to our point of saying, instead of saying you need 9 classrooms, what's your total number of classrooms that you need?
Total
and
number of
based on what we
students you're
have, how
trying to
can we
serve.
achieve this?
But
What can be saved? 'Cause
Until you have an idea how, well, here's the cost of a new classroom. Based on Carl Barker's, 1,000 square feet, and then you multiply that by 25% to account for hallways and mechanicals and toilets and other things. Then you multiply that by the engineering costs and all the other things to get there, that's 1.31 based upon his number in there. And then his cost for new construction is $375 a square foot. For one classroom, that comes out to $614,000. So there's the cost for a new classroom, $614,000.
math? Well, you have 1,000 square foot classroom.
It's
Okay.
$300 a square foot?
$375
Hang on,
a square foot.
I'll go over it again,
It's 1,000 square feet though.
1,000 square feet,
Right.
Yeah.
and that's the classroom. And then you have to add
You said
25%.
600. You said 600.
Then you have to add 25%, because you have to have hallways and mechanical, and that's typical, is 25% over your room. And then the engineering and all the other costs to go with that construction side, out of his number is another 30%. So that's another 30% on top.
Can
Hang
I
on.
stop 1 second? Wouldn't
Yeah.
if you're building a classroom for $375 a square foot, I would think that includes everything.
No, it doesn't.
Includes the engineering,
No,
includes all
no,
that.
I'll show you if you want.
The difference is,
I'll show you.
and to bring back words from my old college classes, performance-based versus prescriptive. What do I would be, tell me what you need, how you, or not, no, how do you want your building to work? At the end of the day, what am I trying to do? Versus how many doorknobs and what is it gonna look like?
Right.
So, that's the big deal difference.
But
And
I just
Your
wanna go back to what I just
camp
said. I just want everybody to understand what I just said. That's the cost for a new classroom. And the order of magnitude is $600,000.
Why are we talking about new classrooms?
Because if you add up, addition is a new
But we
classroom.
don't know if we need one. Ultimately, if we say
Right, we need
performance-based
to
is
send
done.
something out, we have X amount of students, these are the educational needs we're trying to solve, what can you do for us?
But
Performance-based
I want you to
specification.
understand that if you just build an addition of 8 classrooms on the GMS now, they'll come in at $600,000. That's why the Bow figure of 8 classrooms and and some modification, it come in at $13 million.
But maybe we can get away
Just let me
with
finish,
that.
let me finish. So that's,
You're assuming that's a must.
I'm just telling you, that's the order of magnitude when you build new. Now you look at the 50s and 60s, can you fix those classrooms for $600,000 a classroom?
I
No.
don't know,
Yeah, you can.
I don't
It's your
know.
opinion.
Oh, please.
Like,
We all have opinions,
Until you,
It's like,
and what we're talking about is getting someone to tell us concretely,
Okay.
yes, you can or no, you
So
can't.
what you would do is you go to the contractor or your pre-con person and say, at the end of the day, this is how many classrooms I have. This is the building I'm working with.
Yes.
Okay, you can get to that number if we rearrange this, we fix this up a little bit, we do
Exactly,
this,
yes.
you need 2 classrooms.
Yep.
Or it could be like, you know what? You got what you need, we just have to shuffle things around a little bit, you're all set.
Yes.
Well, I think that's exactly what,
Reclaim some space.
right, I think that's exactly what we need to do is go after a firm, I don't care what type, go after a firm that's gonna be able to say, you know, one, we gotta give out general specs, right? How many kids, and here's our policies of how many kids can be in a classroom, right, according to the
They'll
school.
know that.
Okay, fine, then they'll know all of that. But then if we go by that, then we can say, never mind everything else, they will help us define what all these things in yellow actually mean. Right? So we do that for a charge. They come back with, now we've got enough to go write an RFP. A detailed RFP. In the meantime, I think we should also look at what you suggested of, at this time, we start polling the community. Like, listen, we get it, 44 million is out, plus interest and everything else, right? So that's out. That's here. What about 25?
So here's
What about 20? What about 15?
I would caution on
I
all
don't think we
that.
should do that. I think
Because you need to get some sort of idea of what you're chasing after, right? Because someone may say, I'm not down for 25 million for this, but like, that's not a good example. I think people want to see what they're paying for.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Like,
Exactly.
and like, they might be like, you know what, I can get behind that X amount. Well, I don't know what X is, but I can get around X amount because I can see that's gonna take care of these needs for an extended amount of time, and I can see the long-term vision and the plan for this. I can get behind that amount. We did, if we're gonna use the voting stuff to our advantage here that we just saw, that's what we did with the warrant article that passed. This is the plan for it, right? Repair the roof on Campbell, right? This is what we're building up for. And that's why I think we got support for that, because people were like, no offense, you actually have a plan. Like, let's now support this plan,
I jumped
right?
in when you said that.
Sorry, I just looked to my right. It's not, don't take it
think it's-
personal, just.
I would caution on that though, because
Yeah, I
ultimately at
would
the end of
too.
the day, you have to replace the roof. Whether I can earn interest or pay interest, it has to be.
Oh, agree.
I can very easily, there's gonna be a lot of people say, I
But-
don't have to do anything about GMS.
It's the
Wow.
first time in a long time
But
that
wouldn't you
was put out
agree,
there what it was
As
gonna
we
be for.
went through the budget process, we all agreed, good idea to actually have an idea of what we wanna do capital wise.
Yes, and again, but at some point, we own the building already.
Yeah.
We have a roof that is nearing end of life.
Yep.
We have to do something. So we're
Correct.
either gonna bond it, or we're gonna pay ourselves interest. To me, that's a no-brainer, I'm gonna be paying it anyway. Again, there's a faction in this town who's gonna say, I can very easily do nothing at GMS. You have to win those people over.
There's more of a faction than you think.
No.
Because you've done that at GMS for 30 years.
And the and I can't stress enough how poor that building is.
I don't
No,
care from the
I
standpoint,
know.
from,
Just,
sorry, go ahead.
no, I mean, we've been here for an hour and a half almost. And I'm like getting super tense because you keep telling me what I have to do. But I don't know from this whole conversation whether you want a design bid build process or whether you want a design build process. I don't know what capabilities the business agent or the SAU's business agent has to help us pull together an RFP to ask for whichever one of those things we want. I don't feel that the election results means this town's not gonna vote for anything that requires them to spend any money. I mean, you say, well, the police station went down in flames. Well, there's a large contingent of people who said, there's no way I'm voting for anything for the police department because I have limited funds and I want it to be spent on the elementary school because that building is awful and needs something different. So my interpretation of the election results is completely different than your interpretation of the election results. I'm not a person who's focused on, we need to just do what your very illustrative hand motion was, to just not spend anything. I don't think we have that option for Griffin.
No, we don't.
And I think we need to hear that there still is granted, they don't want a $41 million brand-new school on a piece of property that was sprung on them last minute. But that doesn't mean they don't wanna invest in the educational benefits. So the reason I'm asking is, it seems to me that we wanna do design build because it's faster than design bid build. I think you can get to working, if that's resources available to us, working to get that kind of procurement underway, where you award the first part, which is all the things you were talking about.
Right.
Let's sit down in a room, let's talk about it. When we, and I, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm misremembering much, but we went out to bid for, and it ended up being an architectural firm. There was an architectural engineering firm that specialized in school buildings. They came and sat with us and we did all of that, and they got a basic design with, no, you don't have to know how many door handles and whether they're, stainless steel, gold plated or plastic, right?
I want diamond encrusted.
You just.
Oh, you want the $500 toilet.
Right, you just need to know that, you're gonna build a building that's gonna have doorknobs, and
Right.
you're gonna equip them with, not the cheapest, not the most expensive, sort of middle of the road average, what you'd see in a school.
Yep.
And you get enough down in paper, then they go and bid the construction piece of it. That's gonna be their partner going forward to do the rest of it. So I think that's what I'm hearing you say, is that we wanna get someone who will be our designer, engineer, architect, whatever,
Or GC.
for the whole project, but we want their upfront piece first, and we're gonna make a decision on who they are based on their ability to work with us and do that upfront piece, and then they'll go out and bid the GC or multiple GCs and bring them in and carry us through the whole rest of the project. So I don't think it's a whole separate step, I think it's just the first step and where we wanna go.
It depends on how you structure and bid, right? So it depends on what you're requesting. So for my addition on my house, I'm requesting, I just want plans. I'll spend whatever time that this architect wants just for me to get plans in my hand. That way in 5 years after I sell my firstborn and my left arm, I can say, go build this for me. Or I'll go put that set of plans out to quote from 5 or 6 builders to go say, all right, here's the price to go do it. You can do exactly what you're suggesting, which is kind of the same idea as what Carrie's suggesting, and it's all interlaced, is that we go hire someone that's a design build firm or an engineering firm to say, help us define this, and then I think ultimately it's up to the school board to then go back and say, yeah, now go continue and quote it, or now we gotta go put this out to quote for 4 or 5 to, I think, I was just reading through the policy, it's gonna be up to at least 3 written quotes in hand.
And it's not uncommon, like pre-con,
Right.
people, like you contract for pre-con, a lot of times the pre-construction people will then submit a bid,
Right.
It's not unusual.
Yep,
See, I don't see that as two separate steps.
No,
So-
it can be though.
it can be,
But, I
right.
mean, there's a Design Build Institute of America, you can go on their webpage, they can,
Right.
if
What-
you need an
what's-
explanation of
What's the process
what
you
it
used
is.
at Campbell? Do you remember?
We hired an architect to do, I would call it like a 30 to 50% design.
Yeah.
And these, now granted, this was we have this lot, because we bought the property, and, and here's how many classrooms we told them roughly what we needed it to do. And the business agent helped us write the RFP. And it was mostly quals based, but we also needed to know their rates, because we needed to know what they were gonna charge us. But they understood they were bidding a design build project in there, and that the first step of the design part of the design build was that they were gonna flush out all those details with us.
Actually, it sounds like you did a design bid.
They-
Did that
Yeah.
architect firm end up doing the construction?
Yeah, they stayed from start to finish.
But there's a couple
That's
distinct
fine. We
differences
didn't-
though.
That's the kind of thing I'm looking for. I want someone that's we're gonna pick them from the beginning and they're gonna take us all the way through the end.
But that's
No,
a
they
design
spoke
bid
this up.
build process.
Marilyn, correct me if
No,
I'm.
it's not, because if,
It is.
okay, design bid build is what he talked about for the room on his house. It's like, give me the whole design, and if I can't build it now, I'll come back 2 years from now and hand it to a builder and they can bid on it.
Can I just, like,
There was no bid in the middle. You didn't get prices from other contractors.
No, we got,
We put
we got enough of the rough outline on paper so that we could pick their teaming partner, and then their teaming partner, builder, constructor, went through, so the design was informed by what the builder could do. And I forget at one point we got a not to exceed price. And then, prices changed, whatever, so things were like, oh, well, this ended up being more expensive, so maybe we'll buy a less expensive
Right.
tile.
can I ask a question though, and make a point associated with it? So, there's a major difference between when we were looking at the high school versus this, right? Which was the fact that, correct me if I'm wrong, one, we knew that we did not have an option for our kids, so we knew we had to build a high school, right? So we knew, like, that was like a pretty well accepted thing at the time, like, we have to do this. And we were starting from scratch because it was, there was a lot, right? So it was like, okay, go do this. The thing that I'm concerned about difference-wise with this is, number one, there isn't a clear, like, hey, we absolutely have to achieve this thing, or we have to measure
I disagree
that.
with that statement.
Well, no, we have to achieve, we have a lot to achieve, right? But we know that there's multiple components of what we need to try to, that we would like to achieve that we have to still vet out. And then there's the other piece of it is there may be more than one way that we achieve it, whether it's, again, knock down a portion of the building and add an addition, or renovate the whole building. That, to me, that difference is like, we need some help guiding that piece of it too.
But that's exactly what, she was talking about, is that what Marilyn was talking about, is that we go out and we do, call it the pre-con portion of that, and say, here's everything we need, right? So take all those yellow items, and we say, redesign gymnasium. It's currently this size, it needs to be this size to comply with code, right? They'll know all of that, they'll help us do that. So then that way we know how to spec redesign gymnasium. And then if we go through that, through all the yellow items and all the other stuff in the on-site insight report, then they'll be able to say, just on the pre-con, here's how you write your RFP, or here's everything you need to include in that RFP. Now, this also comes down to how we spec it to say, I don't need 9 classrooms, I need to be able to service 500 students, including all of this stuff. They should have the knowledge that core services should be centralized to minimize movement and all this other good stuff. And along with that,
Well, regardless, we can still highlight, these are
Yeah.
some of our challenges right now
correct,
that we want.
yes.
Right, okay,
And-
so yeah, I
So-
think that that's.
But
I want to ask one clarifying question on your description there. So you hired the architect, they did that 30% design. Then did the school or your team choose the builder, or did the architect choose the builder?
The architect got quotes from different builders and came to the committee and the school board, this is my recollection, and said, here's who we recommend partnering with to get it through the next step.
Right.
So
You
we
did
had
not-
like,
You
we
didn't
had
put out a
like,
second RFP to builders and say, give us prices for this. The architect did that and said, hey, use Joe's firm, and you did.
He invited in multiple firms and
They worked for the
Can I-
school or they worked for the architect?
No, they
they
weren't.
worked for the school.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, I assume this is the same process we just did with the new school. Did you hire what's called a construction manager?
We had like an ombudsman, it was like a
Yeah.
single guy,
Well, it's a firm,
Right.
it's a
Yeah.
firm.
Clerk of the
clerk
works.
of the works.
Yeah, but that's different, that's different, that was somebody for you. What you're describing, what's called, is the same thing that we had with Kyle. Kyle hired, you hired Kyle Barker as the architect. Then, there was a process of solicitation to hire what's called a construction manager. They're the ones that do just what you talked
Did they even
about.
get to that point?
What's that?
Did we even ever get to that point?
Yeah, we had
We had
BPS.
Bonnet, Page and Stone, we also had a clerk of the works.
So they were working.
That's different,
So
just kind of
the
put this up
contractor was working for Kyle Barker or for the school?
for the school. The school put that out, and did just what you did, and that's what we did at the fire, town hall, way back when, in the 90s. We hired the engineering firm, then we interviewed construction management firms that would now come and work with us and do just what we talked about, refine the design, give us, okay, they suggested changes to the heating layouts and stuff like that, I remember that. And then they went out and got the guaranteed maximum price. They solicited all the bids. We took that then, that's what went to the town. So the process you used at the high school is exactly what we should be doing here. I agree with you, 100%.
I would agree
I
with
think
that.
we all are.
Yeah.
There are variations, 'cause that's not what we did, that's not what we did for the fire station.
So how is that different than
The fire
your
station,
description?
we hired the contractor who had a team of architects and engineers. The
your
the consultants
original-
worked for the contractor.
Your original request was to look for someone who had all those services
I'd have to look
in-house.
this, I'd have to see what, I would assume so, I didn't write the RFP.
But I'm just
So,
saying, like,
but
your
our-
concept is to look for someone that has all of those
Yeah.
services from design, architectural,
Yeah.
engineering, all the way through final construction.
But my understanding with like a lot of the going the other way is that like with Kyle, for example, right? He would quote stuff, he would come to us and say, all right, like Bonnet, Page and Stone, so like whether or not they work on this is another
Right.
thing. And I have to add more if it's not Bonnet, Page and Stone, because if I haven't worked with someone, right? But like Bonnet, Page and Stone, I've been working with on this project, this project, this project. I've asked them to actually update their numbers based off of that project that they're actually in the process of working on. So it was the same type of scenario where it was like we were getting the same source of information, right? Like, cause
So it all depends on like, do you want your information from the guy who's building it or the guy who's designing it? Because I can tell you that how you design it is never how it's get built. So the question is, do you prefer working with the architect or do you prefer
Exactly.
with the contractor?
I would go with the contractor.
As a contractor background, we'll talk to the contractor. I can tell you the number of nightmares. I'm like, architect, I can build that, but you're not gonna like what I'm gonna have to do in order for it to happen. And
I guess,
so.
I just wanna make sure, from like going the contractor route, that they're
The
gonna be able to
contractor's more-
conceptualize.
The contractor's the guy who builds it. He has
No, I get it.
his hands are dirty, they're the ones that get it done. The
I get it, but-
architect has very
You know,
pretty
you
buildings.
can't put that archer, because you have nothing supporting the side.
Yeah, we had, that's one that's
Architects
great,
love to
but
do
how are you getting there from here? I can build that sound isolation thing, but I have to punch a hole in it for a sprinkler. You sure you want me to do that?
That all makes sense to me, but I guess I just wanna make sure that they're gonna be, like, have the right frame of mind to say,
Well, that's
okay.
where the qualifications talk, these guys, the guys who build this, they build fire stations, they build town buildings, they build schools. They know that.
Right, but we're talking about a bunch of buildings that were built from scratch, as
No.
opposed
I don't think
to.
that changes
No.
anything. It's
No.
But even still, no,
They'll-
they renovate
They
like
know how to
crazy.
renovate, it's the same,
I
renovate.
don't think I've ever
construction, it's all
built a brand
construction
new
with it.
school, I only
But
live in
helping us
Raleigh.
determine, okay, helping us, my concern is just helping us determine, do we?
Rarely will you
knock
find a
down-
contractor who only builds new. Like realistically, they're build new, which is great because it's easy, but they also renovate, which
These
can
guys
be
are-
painful because you have, lots of surprises. But it is what it is, right?
So-
They do
So,
both.
I mean,
I-
that was
I guess
my original
finish
kind of
your
thought in the
thought, Matt.
beginning, is to find a firm like that had everything in-house.
Right.
And it could take us from start to finish. That would, I
Because then
think,
you
is
don't
more
have this
ideal
like
than having
profile.
to find multiple firms, and I think finding multiple firms can get more costly.
The end of my
It's also
thought,
more time.
the end of my thought
More
was.
time consuming, it's more costly, I'd rather find one firm that can take it start to finish.
Well,
The-
I think,
Go
I think the difference between what you're describing and what I'm describing is that you're looking at one firm and I'm thinking of, a teaming arrangement.
Mhm.
When you say
What does-
team,
what does that
team
mean?
for, what do you mean?
Well, where they, when they come to bring to do the pre-construction and design stuff, they've already got a contractor teamed up with them so that they can inform both ways.
I mean,
Like to your example,
And see, I would.
You guys are describing the
This
same
out
thing, but it's who's
before-
driving
yeah.
the bus.
But I
Yeah,
would- I would-
yeah,
my
that-
concern
that-
open
that's
to-
exactly it.
So my concern is who's driving the bus. I think you're both talking about
Okay.
achieving the same thing, because you wanna have both the input of both a contractor or, construction manager and an architect. My concern with having the contractor or the construction manager drive the bus is we're going and asking them, hey, should we look at achieving this by eliminating portables, or should we keep portables, or should we look at this by achieving, demolishing the 50s and 60s wing, or adding that, like, I think at that level, I think that having the bus driven by someone that does the design piece of it, with being informed immensely by a construction manager, is more important because of the uncertainty of what we're looking to do.
So I think you can achieve both, right? Like, you can go look, you can put it out as like, the structure you're looking for, a design build kind of company like Carrie's talking about. But there's nothing stopping an architectural firm like you're talking about that has a building partner
Right, you can do that.
coming
Yeah.
in as a group together and saying,
Right.
we're gonna bid this together. I'm the architect and the designer, you're the builder, let's go bid this project together.
And I think that's gonna come down to how we write this version of an RFP, or not us, but the school board and the business administrator is gonna be, we need someone, a team, whether it's an engineering firm or a design build firm, to come in and help us, inform us of cost and options of achieving X, Y, and Z.
So I
And-
kind of feel like we're all on the same page with this.
I mean,
For the first time.
I would say I am, but I would also say that, yeah, I mean,
Well,
I guess, sorry,
finish.
let me finish.
Don't
My,
underline things now, we're on such a roll.
I think when it comes down to this is, when we get to that state, we have to be very careful of making suggestions to the firms of how to achieve.
Don't
Right.
solution anything.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
this is what
just,
I need the project
here's
to
the
do.
specs that I need, here's my requirements,
Exactly what I'm
Don't
talking about.
offer
I just
up-
wasn't saying it right.
suggestions, because they're gonna take that as assumptions and they're gonna run with it.
Short of the educational programming piece that Kyle was saying we need to
No.
be.
The-
But even
the-
that,
the- those are requirements.
Right.
What I'm not suggesting is,
we'd like to keep
what-
the
right.
tables. Maybe that's
what,
not the option.
what would it cost to remove the 50s, 60s wing? Right, to get this, right? It comes down to, I need total number of X classrooms because I have X number of students. You tell me the most cost-effective way to get there with what I've got.
Yep.
And you
So-
can walk them through the building so they can determine whether or not the room
This
is
is
salvageable.
what we have.
They're gonna need, they'll
Usually
probably
you
need a
can't-
much longer than just a walk through the building.
Right.
They'll probably have to
Right, but they're gonna
tear
want to.
tear that lid off.
Right, so but they'll try to inform themselves, be like, you know
Right.
what, we can't actually salvage it, so let's factor that in our proposal.
Yep.
Well, or what you do is you take the educational specifications, like what you're saying, we need an educational space that includes classrooms for this many people. We need a centralized
Core
core
service,
services.
yep.
We need, all of the obvious things, of, a functioning HVAC system,
Yep.
right? And then say, give us a core, conceptual design and cost estimate for, how that would happen. And then you can always say, as an alternative, if we prefer to remove the 50s and 60s building, tell us what that will do. And as, a second alternative, if we want to eliminate the portable classrooms, what does that do to your base? And as a third alternative, if we want to renovate and repurpose the 1930s building, what does that do to the thing? So
That may be
you've got
bigger in the
the
process.
Yeah,
core,
that-
you've got the core
I think we
that
wanna
meets
hire
the
people to
educational needs. I don't wanna let, what's the cheapest thing we can do?
Right. No. I'm not saying
I want the most
that. All I'm
cost-effective
saying
solution that
is,
achieves the most of our needs.
right,
That will pass.
that will,
But that's.
all I'm
that's
saying
a
is-
conversation.
That meets the most of our needs.
all I'm saying is, I don't wanna offer suggestions to say, we're thinking about removing the portables. I want them and that firm to tell us to meet your needs with a balanced or cost-efficient manner, not cheapest, cost-efficient manner, considering the age of the portables or the state of them or anything else, right?
The other
is
challenges of the port, like,
You gotta, this is what we suggest. Or, you know what? They may come back and say, I recommend trashing that 40s, 50s wing, and keep the portables for the next 10 years because they'll last. The 40, 50s wing is gonna fall in that drainage swale.
But you can almost do that after you engage a company that you're comfortable talking to.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that my RFP would be for that. My RFP would be like, how many hours, what's your time, let's have these conversations,
Yep.
and then you're not biasing the proposals anyway.
I agree with you, I don't wanna give them the solutions, but I think it would be a missed opportunity if we didn't say, give us the solutions that meet these educational specs.
I think it's how you write it.
Recognizing that
These are our
this,
resources.
this community has expressed concerns about preserving the 30s building.
Right. Yep.
The safety and longevity of the 40s and 50s wing. The, functional use and things that come with retaining the portables. So
Yep.
I don't wanna push them in any of those directions one way or another, but I think we've heard feedback on all of those things and we need to at least let them know these are the things the community has brought to our attention. So,
And we can word those things, we can
when
word those things
you
in a
go
way that.
through what meets this basic educational specification, in your opinion, would be the best cost-effective approach forward.
Yeah,
Please also be prepared to answer, like if you're gonna keep the 40s and 50s, you've got a whole group of people you gotta convince.
right, but that's. the
Why is
level-
that, tell me why that's the best solution.
But that's a
Right.
level of detail and conversation I think you're not gonna get on your, like a ballpark to begin with. I think you
Right.
actually need to engage the firm first and then have
And
those
have those
conversations.
conversations, and that's what, I guess
So they
that's-
might be able to say, like, again, like, here's the amount of time, you want us to run through all these different options, it's gonna take us, a team, a whole month, this is the cost. And
Yep.
then we can engage in all those individual conversations and then nail it down and help us.
I mean, classic, just like, which is essentially what we did at the high school, like, we need a building that will house this many classrooms and this many students, and it has to have all the things that go with a high
And the
school.
ability to be
And then
expanded.
it was like, oh, well, do we really need track? Can we
That's where
defer
you
the
want-
athletic fields?
The
Do we
auditorium.
really need the auditorium? And so
Right.
all of those things then got priced separately, and then we went out to the community and said, this is the basic needs being met, cost. This is the extra if you want an auditorium. Here's why we think you should spend it. And then we got the community to say, yeah,
I think,
we could get behind that,
yep.
or
Well-
not, but
I
given
think,
that,
Carolyn,
Oh, crap.
just to jump in there for a second,
My battery died and I think I shut off the meeting, the
at,
Google meeting.
at some
I don't have a
point,
battery.
uh,
Try to get on.
It's up to you.
we came
We
back
got 15
to-
minutes.
Do you need a power cord?
No, I got a power cord in my bag. I
we
just
came
didn't plug it
back
in.
to
I think it was just Jen and she had to
We
go to a
gave
conference,
the committee
concert or something.
a bottom line figure. We think this is what the community can afford, and that was 12 million. And that took a lot of the pressure off. We said, okay, we have this amount of money, we can build this to that amount of money, and that took a lot of the pressure off. I think we need to, in listening to what everybody said, we need to build some assumptions, like for instance, the whole issue of the portables. Maybe we get rid of all the portables, maybe we keep all the portables, maybe we get rid of some of them because some of them are in better shape than others. And if we do keep the portables, then how do we accommodate them so that it's safe and so forth? The other thing is, like with the gym, we keep hearing the gym being, it's gonna cost so much money to update the gym. When we have a gym that functions now, to me, that's money that we don't need to spend. The whole issue with the cafeteria, yes, the cafeteria is near the road, but it's a functioning cafeteria. Maybe we need to update some of the appliances and so forth, but we don't need to build a new cafeteria because it's near the road.
I think you're describing exactly what a needs versus a wants list is.
Yes, and the whole idea of sprinklers, okay? I mean, sprinklers are fine, I know people feel very strongly about that, and it is by code, but we've existed for all this time without sprinklers. What do sprinklers cost and what do we gain from that? I think the whole idea of the 30s building, my God, the thing's been sitting there for 30 or 40 years and has,
100 years nearly.
that hasn't really functioned any,
I think it's
you know,
storage
to,
right now though, so you
Huh?
might, I think it's storage right now, so you might have to replace it.
well, to me, that'd be money not well spent to me, because it's not an educational function. The whole idea of the 50s wing, you know, maybe we can repair it, maybe we can't, but HVAC has to be at the very top of the priority from that standpoint. So, you know, at one time, we talked about, there are specifications now for earthquakes. Well, come on, you know, there are codes and there are codes. To my way of thinking, we need to have some assumptions that we go and I think our list is a good way to go from there. But like spending money on the gym, when we have a perfectly functioning gym the way it is, sure, it doesn't meet code, sure, it could be better, but hey.
You don't wanna sink the project over a gym.
But
That's
Right.
right, that's
I
right.
totally agree with what you're saying. I think that goes back to what Marilyn was describing, right? Like, here's the price list, right? And like, here's our base price. If you want a better gym, it adds this much to the project.
Yeah.
We don't think you need it, but if you want it, here's the add-on.
That's
Just need
fine,
motion.
that's fine.
I still like to go back to, does anybody have a feel of what a price that the town would consider?
It would be a swag on my part, but
Go ahead,
just
swag
here's-
away.
I think everyone in this room.
And I don't know if that's
probably
helpful to
different
anything.
number.
Well, go ahead, I'd like to hear what everybody thinks.
I would say no more than 15. That'd be my swag.
Marilyn, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm in the 15 to 17 range.
And we could do a lot for that amount of money.
Right.
We
But
might not be able to
gonna-
do everything, but
and that's where it comes down to the list he was talking about, right? Like, these are your must-haves and these are your wants.
so do we suggest to the school board a number? Say, here's our list, we think the town will approve X number of dollars, and let the school board do with it what they want.
I'm not comfortable because I don't think that that's, I mean, Rich just said his is a swag, I agree, mine is just totally.
Just throwing darts at a dartboard,
Right,
just
right.
not
It's
speculating
like,
here, like.
I don't wanna make a
Do you
recommendation
think-
to
do you
the
think
school
school-
board based on,
Do you think you can get 28 million approved?
No.
No,
Oh,
No, but
okay,
I think,
so,
but I do think that the number could swing by, who knows, like $5 million if the community is saying, okay, what are we achieving with this, right? Because I think the one thing that the community hopefully will be sensitive to is if we Frankenstein something just for the sake of hitting a certain price point, are we going to end up in the same position that we're in right now? Like, that's a mistake that we, seem to make repetitively.
I think for a figure of somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 million, we can do an awful lot, and I think we could sell them. Just my own feeling is I think the community would get behind it.
I agree with Rich, and I think that we may not get everything in the yellow. We may get the top 5, we may get the
So
top
is that
10.
assuming all,
for that.
like, we're only touching GMS? Cause I would contend you could reduce that number by redistributing.
Well, see, this is just me, but I think that the redistribution of the students has so many issues, I would rather stay away from that.
See, as a parent
I'm
of
rich.
somebody who would have been out of math classes at LMS, having them in CHS, I've heard parents of students who are, at the higher end, who would love the opportunity to be able to
Oh,
access.
I don't disagree there.
And if the building's so not fully utilized, you're gonna have a hard time selling to some voters, adding to a building when overall enrollment's declining.
I think we talked about last time that it is utilized the appropriate percentage.
Yeah, I'm still not
Really?
on that.
I think, I agree with Rich as well, and I think that.
So that
where-
so then you can keep talking and I can tell you how I'm voting, so.
So,
But I would feel more strongly about what you're saying if we could get down to 2 schools, but we can't.
I have a very long
I just-
litany onto why we can't, but I think we could.
We all have the same litany.
I just look at the amount of things that would need to happen and impacts, good or bad, that has, and you're
Alright, so, but again,
disrupting 3 different schools, sports teams, all sorts of stuff.
so knowing how
that-
the vote went on GMS, and we know the demographics in this town, you're gonna see a lot of people saying, why am I building a new building when there's empty space at CHS?
But there's not
Because
empty
it's
space,
not
like, I think
empty
that's a
space, and
misnomer
that-
of that
That-
description.
okay.
Because Jake was here the other day, and he
They-
doesn't have these just
Well,
empty classrooms
So
left
we
in
had
cobwebs.
600 students, and now we have under 400. There has to be empty
Hey,
space.
Brian, how are you doing on that rescheduling?
Doing great. It's on the agenda today, but we haven't gotten to it
That's
yet.
right, so here, my segue is,
Why
I
don't you
think
tell
it
us how that's
has to-
going?
We got 5 minutes.
as a person in the district saying, the school is housing far fewer students, it makes sense to move kids over, because clearly you had the space before when we had 600 kids. So the space exists. Now you're telling me it doesn't.
You had
So-
600 kids for 4 grades, not 6 grades.
It's
There's a
600
difference.
kids,
I
it's
don't
still
know
a number of
I don't
classrooms.
know how that matters.
It's still a
There's
number of
different
classrooms,
classrooms.
Alright, so let's
I'm not
Hey,
putting
hey,
7th and 9th grade in the same room.
but you don't
Why?
have to.
You could if it's
Okay,
kids
so
who are highly advanced. Absolutely.
we're not
That's
gonna take the one
that's
off.
not how your demographics work, right? Like you're on a what if of that many kids end up at the higher level, right? Like
But even still.
every year is gonna be different.
600
You can't
kids
plan like
divided
that.
by 20, you have so many classrooms.
Okay, so I think that going back to where we were a few minutes ago, ultimately, if we decide to recommend retaining someone to help us identify these things.
I would like that to be an option, discussed.
Fair enough. That works. 7:25, I really, yeah, you have a super fast update.
Sure, I can give a super fast update. I built a mock schedule using the enrollments for next year of what it will look like if you took the high school
And what is
classes.
the enrollment projected for next year's high school?
325, 330, something
So-
like that.
Almost half the peak, there
Okay,
has to be
okay,
space. Go ahead.
let him finish, he's only got 5 minutes.
Whether you could, if we took the wing where the SAU is and above it and said, just accepted that was gonna be 7th and 8th grade, those
Okay.
classes. Now, there's work that would have to be done, but that's where the kids are gonna be. So you utilize the rest of the classrooms to schedule your high school classrooms. Is it possible? It is possible to do a schedule in that class. Now, I didn't do like an actual build
Right.
that puts conflict in and like
Right.
do all
Yeah,
that
yeah,
schedule stuff. Just physically build the classes based upon the request for next year, right? Try to accomplish a little bit of that.
Mm-hmm.
For example, not putting American Lit and Algebra 2 at the same time because those are likely junior classes and you want to keep them away from each other. So is it possible to do that for core classes? Yeah. There's pros and cons to that. Teachers, I
Pros and
only got
cons.
5 minutes. There's pros and cons to that.
Right.
And you're maxing out rooms and you're boxing things in, but it is possible. Where I need to do some more work is some of the unified arts. And I'm just gonna use gym as an example. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not saying you can, I'm not saying you can't, I just need to do more work on whether you can successfully schedule gym classes for the 7th and 8th kids and all of the high school kids. And whether we have the space for that. There might be some creativity because some of the high school classes, for example, meet in the weight room, in other spaces, right? But there is limited gym space. You
Do we
can't.
allow kids to use outside sports towards gym credit?
No. No.
Oh, we should change that.
No, I'm just saying,
Whoa,
as
that's that.
As a
I never had to take
student-
gym in high school because I played sports.
well, as a
That's
student,
very,
I want an
yeah,
extra
guys,
bonus.
guys, we're going down a rabbit
No,
hole.
but I'm just saying that there's a way to address that.
2-minute rabbit hole. Can't-
Okay.
can't
So
do
that's
it.
that. You know, I started to visit other schools that are in some sort of 6 through 12, 7 through 12 model. I went to Sanborn last week. I'm supposed to go to Hopkinton
Okay.
District next week. Continue to get feedback from the different people who are in those type of configurations.
No, I
The
appreciate that.
big thing that every school has stressed is that you have to have 2 separate bell schedules. And that they make a considerable effort of making sure the 7th and 8th graders are not in the same hallway as the 9th and 12th graders, or in the hallways at the same time besides the beginning of the day and the end of the day. That almost across the board was kind of an absolute. That
And is
they-
that in the schedule you built or no?
I did a mock bell schedule of what it would look like, you know, again, there's pros and cons to that, like movement. If we had more time, I could show
Right.
that, happy to show that next time.
But it's
what
not
that would look
impossible.
again, on paper, you can build a bell schedule for it, yes. Now, again, there's pros and cons to it, and whether you want that number of kids in the CAF at some time, if you're gonna do these things to kind of offset some of the stress you're gonna put on. This hasn't dug into staffing yet, like how you would staff all of this, right? You know, there seems to be a couple schools bigger than us, a lot smaller than us, and Hopkinton seems to be only the like size to us that does something like this, right? The smaller ones, which I'm talking about less than 200 kids, 150 and smaller, share unified art teachers because to get this all done. Sanborn, for example, does not really share unified arts unless it's like a specialized type of band program or something like that.
So you mean they have like separate arts teachers for the high school?
Yeah, they have like a art teacher for the middle school age kids and like art teachers for the high school age kids, right? So we would have to discuss how that would look, right? Like there are different components of all that type of stuff. So, you know, continue to look at this, like from scheduling classes physically in the building, you can do that, and then you gotta talk about the pros and cons of
Right.
that type of schedule and stuff, so.
Cool. Thank you for that update.
That was a 6-minute update.
Love
sorry.
it.
Awesome. So, all right, so
So you're saying there's a
I know people feel like these things are kind of dragging on, but I do feel like we are actually making progress. I think that we have, at least as far as I'm concerned, it sounds like we have an idea for how we think the school board should potentially proceed at the next level. So I don't know, do we obviously have to have one more meeting, we're not
Yeah.
gonna go say something tomorrow at the school board, but at the next meeting, we can probably just finalize what we discussed today and then make that preliminary recommendation.
When is the next meeting?
It's in 2 weeks.
2 weeks from today?
Let me go look on my calendar.
It changes between Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Right.
It's a
Totally messed
Thursday.
me up.
2 weeks
The other day I had Tuesday and Thursday on my calendar, and I said, you know, I think it was Thursday. So I took the Tuesday off,
I
and I got
actually
your email.
Don't know if we have
We do, it's
April
April 10th.
April 10th, sorry.
Oh, yeah, that
I
was-
got to April.
That's a Thursday.
That's a
That's
Thursday.
on my
Thursday or
calendar.
Tuesday.
Oh, that's how we're getting back on, okay, so we're getting back on we were currently on the track of being the same week as the school board, which has been brutal. So that's how we get back on, because we had to make some changes, so.
So it's 3 weeks, actually.
It's 3 weeks,
Yeah.
yes.
And how many school board meetings are there in between?
One,
Two.
two,
Maybe
sorry.
That's
Two.
tomorrow, right?
There's one tomorrow.
Tomorrow, and then we have the first week of,
April 2nd.
but we have.
So
but the next-
obviously, they're not getting a recommendation from us by today.
I think they're aware.
Yeah, no,
We
they're,
are aware.
Plus, like 3 of you are involved, so it's all good.
Only 2 of us so far.
I haven't been to a meeting yet.
Alright,
All right.
as of Friday, 3 of the board members will be fully informed of this.
So, yes, so are we good to adjourn, everyone?
Motion to adjourn.
Good,
Second.
good, all in favor? Opposed, abstained. Passes.
Further discussion? No.
further discussion. I'd like to stay for another 2 hours. All right, thank you very much.
I'm sorry.
Good night.